Hello, everyone, and welcome to the March Association of Design Education webinar. This is going to be a good one. I had a little preview of the beautiful slides, and I'm so excited. I've known Margaret for a long time, and I'm not going to say how long because it's been a while. But before we get started, let me just tell you a little bit about Margaret. She is the owner and the principal of Decorate to Sell. She has provided professional staging, color, redesign, and training to thousands of professionals across the country and in Canada. She's an approved trainer with ADE. She's been recognized for her staging, color, and redesign expertise by numerous organizations and corporations, including Harvey Industries, Sherwin-Williams, Benjamin Moore, the Massachusetts Association of Realtors, and This Old House. Enterprise Bank recognized Margaret's role in pioneering the concept of staging at their Celebration of Excellence. She's also a longtime realtor and has been recognized by Cendant Corporation for her real estate success with their Elite Quality Service Award. Her professional affiliations are too numerous to mention, and we are delighted to have her with us tonight. Welcome, Margaret.
Oh, Anne, you are such a sweetheart. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have a glass of wine. Oh.
Looks like we have one right there in front of you.
We're all ready for you, girlfriend. I'm so happy to be here because ADE is such a great group, and your hallmark is that you make it so special. And so I'm so excited to be here tonight. And I just want to welcome a few people that I'm noticing a few people here. I see Grace Ann. I see Janet. I see Cheryl. Also, I see Cindy there. So I want to thank everybody for just taking time out of their evening to come here and join us tonight. ADE always has these webinars once a month, and we all gain so much from it. And even the trainers, we take these webinars too, because we always learn. And that's really the mission statement of the ADE, is Association of Design Education, because this is where you learn, taking these courses and classes and connecting and networking with people. Every time you do that, you know what, you're building another step forward in your business to create a better bottom line. That's what it's all about. So thank you, Ian, for having me tonight.
Well, thank you, Margaret. That sounded, I didn't pay you to do that.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll send you a check.
Nice.
All right. So tonight we're actually going to be talking about design mistakes and how to avoid them. And what I'd like to do is, what really kind of got me started thinking about this and brainstorming with Anne about the topic was that I want to tell you about a realtor friend of mine named Kathy, who shared a story with me that I thought you would all find worthwhile. Kathy was showing properties to a young woman who happened to bring her mother along too. And this buyer, she was very invested in getting a house and wanted something as soon as possible. And as they were going through the property and walked into the kitchen and dining room, the mom stopped, looked around, and said she didn't care for the house and wanted to leave. And Kathy was taken aback by this, and the daughter asked her mom, gee, Mom, what's up? So her mom took her aside, and they talked quietly together for a minute, and the daughter turned and asked Kathy if they could go see the next property, that they did not want to see this one. So Kathy said, of course, and they went on to the next property, and actually the young woman made an offer on the next property. So later, as Kathy shared with me, Kathy asked the buyer what stopped them. And now my friend, she said that the property was staged, cleaned, decluttered, and organized, and all the bits were in the right places. And Kathy is a supreme realtor. She's actually taken several of my staging classes, so of course she's got to be good. But she really knew what was going on with the property. However, the buyer shared that the dining room centerpiece, and this is a little bizarre, but this is where our buyers are coming from, the dining room centerpiece reminded her mother of a funeral. And her mom didn't want her to buy a house that reminded her of death and funerals. And of course, the daughter agreed. So think about that for a minute. Really, it's a little strange, but this is where our buyers are coming from. We have to kind of appreciate where what we're showing them when we're staging a property. So the stager had staged the property, but had neglected a few small but important details. And in this case, she had used a tall centerpiece in the dining room. You know the kind. Lots of height,
Yes.
no harmony, wrong
Yes.
scale, and had just plunked it on the table as an afterthought. But it wasn't an afterthought to the buyer and her mom. The room spoke to the buyer, and instead of saying welcome home, it said death and funerals. It really had a funereal, I think that's the word for it, funereal appearance to it. So that's why we're here today to
That's
keep in
pretty
mind
astonishing.
Isn't it? It is. And you know what? Unfortunately, they lost the sale because she was ready and willing to buy. She went and bought the next property. But my friend Kathy, as we were talking about this, she said, actually, after looking at it, you could understand why it had that. It was just too tall. It just took over the room, and it was the girl's father had passed away the previous year, so it was just kind of on top of mind. So we're here today to keep in mind that staging is not just about real estate and staging as preparing a property for sale, but it's also about design composition. And all this could have been avoided if the stager had just taken a little extra time and considered some design principles. So tonight, Ian, we're going to cover some of those, how to apply them to certain spaces in the home, and make everyone the best home stager ever.
Sounds wonderful.
We're ready. So let's get started. So we can all definitely agree that houses do need to be staged. And I mean, don't you just love that? Oh my goodness. And the public and the real estate industry now are demanding it. So it's become part of our culture. It's so important, and it's so gratifying that now people understand how important staging is. But let's talk a little bit about what is home staging. So home staging really it's real estate and home design. And when we pair these opposing industries together, we've got this big baby called home staging, but we're going to take it even a step further. What is it? Why is it necessary? Well, what we're doing is we are actually attracting attention in a good way and turning a tire kicker into a consumer. And this fabulous woman here, Dorothy Draper, is actually, you could almost call her the mother of interior decorating, because she actually started decorating homes back at the turn of the last century. And her partner, I believe it's Carlton Varney, they actually still have their decorating studio on Fifth Avenue in New York. So initially, as a buyer tours a property, home staging gives the buyer the feeling of excitement, delight, and the anticipation of home ownership. That's what we're going for. But tonight, what we're going to do is we're also going to look at what not to do. And God bless Steve Jobs, deciding what not to do is just as important as deciding what to do. And we could all learn from each other's mistakes. So we're going to cover that tonight. How are we doing, Ann?
We're doing great.
We're
just doing great. Yes.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about what is interior design and why does it matter? Well, interior design is a little bit of biology. It's also, it's appealing to our visual senses, but it's also our ability to focus on and perceive detail. And that's actually restricted to a very narrow point of view for us. That goes into the whole biology thing of our eyes and our cone of vision. But pretty much it's all about making sense of what we see. A few months ago in Boston, they actually had a fun house all made up out of mirrors. And I think, everybody can remember when you're a kid and you're at the carnival and you see you walk into the space and it's just filled with mirrors. You're distracted. You're not know where you're going. Well, that's pretty much what happens because to make sense of what we see, our brain is interpreting what our eyes see. And it assembles this information into visual patterns that we can recognize. Oh my goodness, that's all we're going to talk about biology, but really you can kind of get a sense of where this is going. And all this is happening unconsciously. It's all happening when we walk into a room. Just imagine that. So when you're familiar with a space, you can get up in the middle of the night and walk into the kitchen in the dark, and you're comfortable because you know where you're at and your body already has muscle memory to what's going on. But when you're in a new space, you don't have muscle memory, and it can be uncomfortable unless it is actually designed properly. And that's what we're talking about. So just as we get rid of clutter when we stage a house so that the buyer can see beyond the mess, we also want to have good design that will create harmony within a space. Poor design creates discord, both mentally and physically. And you can understand that because now the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, has made so many efforts to create harmony within spaces for people with disabilities. So we're really not just putting pretty things out there now, we're really developing a concept for every home that we're staging. Oh my gosh, here we have it, what not to do. And this is why it matters. Because good staging sells houses, and good design will make you a better stager. Discord throws people off mentally and physically. And the end result of good design is a beautiful room, a sold property, and a bigger bottom line for you because the house will sell. And this cute, adorable, sad little room we're going to come back to and talk about a little bit later. But so let's talk about then what is interior design. And pretty much design theory is a set of ideas to help you create a beautiful space. The definition we have here on the slide, and I'm not going to read that, but what's really important here, I think, and actually I think it's pretty funny, this definition, is that the manipulation of spatial volume. Who knew that when we moved all that kind of furniture, it was called manipulation of spatial volume? Now we know. But of course, you've all heard of color theory, and that's a roadmap to help you create beautiful color schemes. Well, design theory works in almost the same way to help you create beautiful rooms. And I like to call them the sisters, design theory and color theory. So there are actually 7 principles that we're going to discuss tonight. And these are the core concepts or ideas of how to create a space. And we also have elements. So you could consider the principles being the recipe, and the elements are actually the ingredients of great design. And a great example of beautiful and good design is actually at the Palace of Versailles. And now, Ian, I want you to listen to this because I have a field trip for us here.
Okay.
If you haven't been to Versailles, you could almost take it as a business trip or a field trip with the ADE, because the great designer Albert Hadley said, if you want to really, really learn about good design, go to Versailles. Visit it and study how they used and manipulated the space, the shapes, the lines, the textures, and see how they did that. All right, Ian, are you interested in a field trip?
I think our conference should be there this year.
Oh my gosh. All right, we have to talk, girlfriend. So I get so excited about this because it really is, when you look at the magnificence of Versailles, I just really recommend everybody to, Google it, go to the library, check it out. But from here, let's just get right into the principles. And so you could call these are like 7 recipes to help us make a beautiful room. Scale and proportion, and we're going to go into these in detail. So let's just move right into them. And the first principle is actually rhythm. And just as music has rhythm, oh gosh, Ian, I feel like I can hear Taylor Swift singing Haters Gotta Hate right now, but I love that song. So just as music has rhythm, so does space. And every space has rhythm and is created by the walls, the stairs, and the features of the room before you even do anything to it. And our job as designers is to manipulate it and have it work for us. Now, if you look at this, this beautiful piece of architecture here, and you can see the staircase. So here we have rhythm, the staircase going up. You're going up the stairs and it's letting your eye follow it. And that is rhythm. And also we have contrast because we have the dark edging of the staircase against the white backdrop. That's contrast that we have here. So the amazing thing is rhythm lets your eye move around a room. Otherwise, your eye is just stagnant and the room gets boring. So rhythm is really important. The next two principles are actually scale and proportion. And they're very distinct, but they go hand in hand because they both relate to size and shape. Proportion is the ratio of one design element to another. And we're actually going to talk about that in a few minutes, but you could see that, consider a coffee table. The rule of thumb is that a coffee table should actually be 2/3 the size of a sofa. So that's your ratio, so that's proportion. And scale concerns itself with the size of one object compared to another, just like that big table we saw a few minutes ago with that teeny weeny little bowl on it. That's scale. So those actually are two of the most common mistakes that you'll see home stagers making because they're neglecting that. And it's very easy to identify.
And that actually relates to your story about the arrangement on the table as well, does it not? Because it was
absolutely. Because it was
large
oversized, too tall, and we're going to get into those ratios, and that's exactly what it is. Now, the next principle is actually balance, and there are 3 styles of balance. One that we're all familiar with, I'm sure, and that's symmetry, and that's found in traditional interiors. So if you looking at this beautiful room, I wish I could say this was my living room, but it's not. But if you actually drew a line down the middle of that mirror, straight down, that would be called a vertical axis. And that's a term that's used frequently by designers. And the same objects are repeated in the same positions on either side of this axis. So everything happening on the right of the mirror is the same thing that's happening on the left of the mirror. Now, what's really good for us as stagers to keep in mind is that the human form is innately, I love that, I copied this from someone, it's innately comfortable in a balanced setting such as this. So that's really important to know when you're staging a room, perhaps that has an awkward layout, or maybe multiple doors going into the space. By using a symmetrical style on the mantle, that will actually make the buyer feel more comfortable in the room because they can anchor their vision on that. I mean, little things, and it's kind of fun. So the second style is actually the opposite of symmetry, and that's asymmetry. And now if you can almost see that white mirror on the wall there. If we drew a line right down the middle of that white mirror, which is called the vertical axis, it's different on the left side and on the right side. However, these dissimilar objects have equal visual weight and eye attraction. I mean, they just draw our eye to it, but they are definitely different pieces. We have the driftwood on the left and the vessel on the right. They're so different from each other. But it also suggests movement, and rooms with asymmetrical balance are actually more lively, and they actually call them active. This is considered active balance. It's more difficult to achieve, but I have a couple of tricks to help us all create it further on in our webinar. But as you look at this and you can see how different it is, the other thing that's great about this is that it's informal. This is something you couldn't imagine using the room that we just saw, which was so formal and refined, having these pieces instead on that mantle. It would definitely give it a different vibe, totally. Oops. All right. And then the third style of symmetry is actually radial symmetry. And all the elements are arrayed around a center point, and the room works its way out from the center. So here the center is emphasized by the ceiling light. And looking at the room, we have the ceiling light, we look down, we have the bowl, the round table, the chairs arranged around the table, the Windsor chair backing, which is round. We have the round rug. The walls are curved around this room, and then the window treatments are curved around it too. So this is a really good example of radial symmetry. The other thing that's interesting about radial symmetry set up in this particular situation is that it also gives comfort to the buyer. The buyer comes in, actually a guest would come into this home, and you can't wait to sit down at this table because you feel safe, secure, and surrounded. And you are, because you're surrounded by family and friends. And you're going to love this picture. This is actually an example of radial symmetry at the Archer Hotel in Burlington, Massachusetts. And again, these shapes are arrayed around a center point. We have a large ceiling medallion in the middle, and around it, surrounding it, are smaller ceiling medallions. It's really beautiful. They've actually painted it in a Tiffany blue, but it almost looks like it's a dark black blue with black undertones. But here's another example of how you could do it. And also, many times you might see on in Pottery Barn or Restoration Hardware, they create these wallscapes of dishes and plates and such using radial symmetry. So it's really around us, and they really are beautiful because the circle is really what people are most comfortable with. Our next principle is contrast. And here, that's when two elements are in opposition to each other. And it could be color, like the colors red and green, or it could be a contrast with, and having shapes, circles and squares with each other. Actually, if you look at the White House, the outside of the White House, the way the windows are set up and designed, they're using contrast with the different shapes and styles on it. And also here in this dining space, we have a contrast of textures. We have a smooth glass tabletop, and then we have a rough texture of linen chairs. So that's contrast with furnishings. Just keeping everything interested, but not taking over, not being a showstopper. And one of our almost second to last principles is emphasis. And this is focal point. And a room design's biggest enemy is boredom. A well-designed room always has, depending on its size, one or more focal points. One focal point is always dominant. And in this case, in the bedroom, the bed is always the dominant feature. But you know what? Look at these doors, and these doors are just fantastic. They were barn doors originally, farmhouse style, and what they've done with them is upholstered the doors with raw silk and put tacks with knobs on them. It's really magnificent. So
yes,
it's amazing. And it's really magnificent. And what it's done is it's elevated. We've kept the style of the barn door style, but we've brought it up to another level. And keep this in mind, actually. Here's a tip, because barn doors are going to be around for a long time because so many people have installed them. But farmhouse style is a trend, and it will be out of style shortly or soon in the next couple of years. So upholstering them like this is really a great way to give them a makeover and renew them. So, I mean, it's really, gosh, I want to install barn doors just to do this to them. Oh my God, they're just beautiful.
That is beautiful.
And then our last principle, before we get down and dirty into the details here, is actually unity. And it's when you're not looking at one element or piece in a room, it's when you're looking at the entire room and the room as a whole. And in this case, they did it with color. I mean, when you first look at this room, I mean, it's definitely green, looks like a margarita, but it's done with color and it's pulled it all together. It's created unity. And that's one of the ways to create unity in a home, is by keeping the same color palette throughout the home, but by using different tones or shades throughout the room. So now that we've looked at our principles, Ian, let's talk about mantles. You ready, girl? Okay.
Everyone's favorite.
Yes. So we're going to talk about mantles and sideboards. And here we have it. Balance and symmetry again. Okay, so again, this is a traditional room. The sideboard on the right, this is very formal. We have these magnificent lamps. They're very tall. And we have symmetry here. This is a great room. This is fine dining, but I cannot imagine playing beer pong in this room. It just would not work out. It's not made for it. But if we go to our next room.
No.
No. Wine pong, maybe. But all right. So we go to our next room. And here we have an asymmetrical arrangement above the fireplace. And what they've done is they've actually layered the artwork. So it's asymmetry. Okay, we've got the large piece of artwork in the middle, and on either side, they've put two photographs, okay? But one is a little bigger, one's a little smaller. So we've got small, medium, and large. And they've layered it, and this is a great way to keep a room and a mantelpiece from being flat. And by layering this, they've changed the scale of each item, but the gradual transition from small, medium to large keeps it cohesive. So this is a really easy tip for the next staging that you're doing. Instead of putting up a typical, large artwork in the middle and maybe candles on either side, mix it up and try small, medium, and large with this, because look at how it centers on the room. It pulls the room together. It's black and white. It doesn't take a lot to create something like this, and it really makes a very comfortable room. It actually is more comfortable. It's casual, and it kind of takes it, people want to come in, they want to stay. It's taken away that the fine dining aspect of it. So
I think just to piggyback on what you said, Margaret, I think when you had used that room as the example of here's this formal room earlier, and I think that asymmetry in that mantle takes that edge off of it being so formal. It kind of creates an interest there.
It does, and you can see why they call asymmetry active, because it keeps you're engaged in it instead of just being like sitting in a museum.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, in these two pictures that we have here, what's interesting about these is I first look at the picture on the right, and we can see the line of axis going straight through the middle of the fireplace, the mantle here. And when you look to the left, they have a series of 4 picture frames. And then to the right, we have the large and the very small. Now, granted, these are all the same shape, but they're all different sizes. That's what's really important. And that's what differentiates this picture from the picture on the left. The picture on the left, I got it off of the MLS, and it's 2 rectangles, same size, and that's what throws it off. It's also just 2. If they had done 3 with 3 different sizes, as we saw earlier, it would bring more interest to the space. And so this is the one on the left. God bless them. This is what we don't want to do, but we want to think in terms of using odd numbers and different shape sizes, different sizes. Also here, the thing about, we also have 2 mirrors here, and what they're doing is they're pointed to the ceiling. And mirrors are very interesting because that's another way that people feel comfortable in a room. If a mirror is hung from, I want to get this right, if the mirror is hung below the middle of the mirror, it will tilt down. So we want the mirror to tilt down so that the buyer, when the buyer comes into the room, is reflecting them and they can actually anchor themselves into the room. In this case, we have not just, Betsy Park wants to know where are the mirrors. The mirrors are the 2 mirrors over the fireplace on the left, Betsy. I wonder if she got that.
Did you use your pointer and
Oh,
see?
do I have a pointer?
Well,
Oh,
your mouse.
oh, I didn't. Well, learn something every day. So here are, oh, she thought they were
Oh,
pixels. Well, I'm glad you pointed that out, Betsy, because I learned how to use my I learned how to use my mouse. So here we have the two mirrors, and they're pointed to the ceiling. So you can actually see this is the lamp, the ceiling fixture up here. You can see it here. But when someone walks into a room and they see it pointed at the ceiling, it throws them off. And then when you have two mirrors throwing you off, it really kind of throws off the equilibrium. All right.
And isn't it, Margaret, in staging in particular, mirrors can be very advantageous because they can reflect prettiness, or bring in light, or something along those lines. So they can be an effective tool in staging as well, not just a decorative whatever effect.
Absolutely, Anne. Absolutely, because we want them to reflect, just like you said, reflect the beautiful view outside. We want them to reflect something tangible, something that's going to add to the buyer's investment in the property. You know, they're going to become invested in it because it's going to give them a chance to. Plus, you know, the more light you bring into a room, buyers are like moths that go to the light. So the more light we bring in, the better. Absolutely.
Very true. And just one quick tip Grace Ann shared, which if you are hanging mirrors, she's just suggested taping a small block of wood to the top of the mirror, and that will tilt it down so you don't have to rewire the mirror.
Oh, Grace Ann, thank you. That is a great tip. Oh my gosh, I never realized you could do that. That's much easier than hanging it from below.
Yeah,
that's a block of wood. And Grace Ann is one of our ADE trainers in Chicago. She's wonderful. I'm so glad you're here, Grace Ann. All right. So again, here we have now decoratives on a mantle. Let's create some rhythm on the mantle. Small, medium, and large. Use odd numbers. You know, using books to elevate items is so important. And this can create this is a great recipe right here for creating a vignette on either side of the mantle so that you have, instead of having the stiff, formal, passive, symmetrical style, you can have the asymmetrical style. All right, more asymmetry, because we can't get enough of this, because there are some really great examples when you start looking at what's out there. The first one on our left is, I love this room. Animal patterns are big. It's a really great trend they have going on now. And our piece here on the left, if you just looked at the artwork, the grid of artwork, and the two lamps, we have symmetry. But what they've done is they've just added a few pieces in the middle to kind of add asymmetry, so it's not boring. And what's really interesting about this picture is if you look, I'm going to use my handy dandy pointer, if you look at the bottom where this gorgeous rug is, and if you follow the animal line right to the base of the console, right here, see that? And you go right up, look where it ends, at the foot of this sculpture. Everybody see that? The sculpture now is actually pointing over to the left where the ceramics are, and our eye is following that. We're going up over the lamp, around the grid of artwork, and then back down. I mean, it's really created a whole circle for your eye to follow. So let me just do that again. So we're following the pattern of the animal print. We're going up. We're at the foot of the sculpture. We move to the left because that's where it's showing us to go. It's pointing to us. Over the lamp, around the artwork, and down. It's almost like around the world. And Grace Ann says she can't see my pointer. Oh, dear.
Well, we get the idea.
Yeah, we got the idea.
Understand. Yes.
Got it. Okay, on our right, here we have scale. We have this big, huge, magnificent piece of our mirror. And to the right, heavy candles, heavy candle holders. And then in the middle and to the left, we have the books. And if you notice, the books are following the pattern, the shape of the mirror. They're kind of going on an angle. Our eye follows up and around the mirror, and it comes back down to the large scale candle holders. Well, we're going to look at this in another step because this is almost about scale, particularly the one on the right here. Okay, here we have more asymmetry, very easy recipe. 2 lamps on either side, big artwork in the middle, and 2 small vignettes on either side. The one on the right, large painting, 2 vessels, which incorporate the colors in the painting. And also then we have this airy greenery there. Asymmetry. And if you notice over on the right, there are just a few books there. And what that does is that kind of gives us balance, and it also gives our eye a chance to rest because there's a lot going on inside the sideboard. They've got, looks like they've got canvases rolled, maybe wine. So there's a lot going on here. So by just, they're doing asymmetry, but they've just toned it down a little bit because space is so important too. Space lets our eye rest. Here we have it, symmetry on the left. And on the room on the left, this is a busy room. It's got red sofas. We've got the patterned rug. We've got a coffee table chock full of good stuff. Shelving to the right. Leopard print pillows. Oh my gosh. You know what? Simply by having the artwork hanging over the mantle with symmetry, even though symmetry is passive, it's restful. It's giving our eye a chance to rest. You know, we want to keep people moving around the room with rhythm, but we want them to have a chance to also kind of rest and relax. And that's what a space like this allows us to do. So when you have a lot going on in a room, that's when symmetry will work for you and still keep the room casual. Now the space on the right, it's plain, but it's interesting. We've got this beautiful, and I think this is Chippendale mirror, the white lamp, white covered books. Everything's very calm, very soft, quiet, but just having the asymmetry in the middle with just a few books in the middle and then a small plant with greenery, that keeps us engaged with it. We're not bored. That's one thing we want to do is we want to make sure that our spaces stay alive and keep us comfortable. We don't want dead space. Now, here again is this, this great huge mirror, which we just love, with big scale, big candles, lots of books on this bow front sideboard. Now, look to our right. We actually have very thin lines. We've got this desk, thin legs, the chairs with the thin backs, black mirrors. If we were to just enjoy that room on the right for a moment, and now just imagine we just cleared everything off the wall and the top of that table. And we just have a blank table space on top. And imagine that we moved the mirror on our left and these candles from this tabletop on the left, we moved it over here. Can you imagine how this room would look now with this table, this thin top table with these thin legs, with this large mirror over it and these big candles? That's what scale is. That's what scale is all about. It wouldn't fit. It would be the wrong shape and wrong space, wrong size for it. That's what scale is. These pieces on the left work well with this bow front because they're all heavy and they help and support each other. On the right, all these pieces work together because they're supporting each other, but they're from a different, it's almost like plus size, missies, and petites. You get it? You know, it's kind of like dressing. All right, so let's go on here. Now we're going to talk a little bit about rhythm and harmony. And in this room, this is one of my favorite rooms. I love this room. And rhythm is also created by using odd numbers. And if you look in this room, there are odd numbers almost everywhere. Odd numbers are good because it will move your eye around the room. We have 3 side chairs on either side, not 2, but 3 side chairs. Over the fireplace, there are 5 oars or paddles, canoe paddles. Over on the right, we have on the table, we have 1 centerpiece. Over on the right, we have 1 lamp on the sideboard. We have 1 chandelier. And the artwork, I mean, we'll get to that in a minute, but when you look at everything, we've got all these kind of odd numbers going around. And if you look over on the sideboard, actually on the console, you'll see 5 white doves. And I'm going to use my pointer. I don't know if everybody can see that, but just under the artwork on top of the console, there are 5 little ceramic doves. These are all keeping your eye moving around. It's almost like when your eye sees an even number, it just kind of stops dead in the water. It's expectation. It's looking at, the number 1, it's expecting a number 2. If you're looking at 5, it's looking for 6. So it's searching around the room for that other piece. There's also harmony in the room with color. We've got the blue chairs, the blue lamp on the console, the rug on the stairs, and the top half of the painting is blue. The oars are sculptural, and they repeat the color in the artwork. And you put all that together, and the chandelier keeps everything fun. I mean, this is like just a delightful room to go in, sit down, and have a great evening playing card games with your friends and family. And that's how they've moved everything. So it's not just white walls anymore. They've really engaged it. And they've done it very simply with the artwork, with the chairs, and that really interesting creating artwork out of the oars. How are we doing, Ian?
We are doing great. We are just doing great.
All righty. So we're going to talk now about tables and centerpieces. And this is kind of where my friend Kathy had her client mentioning, why she did not want to stay, her mom didn't want to stay in that house anymore. So pretty much centerpieces are all about scale, unity, and balance. Centerpieces can create a visual atmosphere, and they can set the mood or reinforce a theme, a holiday, a season, a celebration, and they can leave a lasting impression. And this is just a beautiful centerpiece here. And of course, they do leave a lasting impression. It could be good, bad, or otherwise. And we want to have good. We don't want to go with otherwise. So pretty much, we don't want to overwhelm a space with a showstopper or an over-decorated table. And that's what these are actually called, these tall centerpieces that, reminded our buyer's mom of a funeral. These are called showstoppers. And, they're fabulous for for an event, but an event is usually held in a large room. And in this case, it's a showstopper because it's stopping all our attention. We're not looking at the windows or the nice space we have here. And the table in this case is actually, it could be over-decorated, but this could be a visual obstacle. One of the things I want to actually talk about for a second is that tall centerpieces tend to be formal, and usually anything vertical implies formal. And do you really want to have a formal, uptight space in a tiny little space like this? Mixing short and tall. Go ahead, Ian.
I was going to say, I think a good name for that might be an eye stopper too, because it definitely stops your eye, and that's not what you want to have happen.
Not at all. It is an eye stopper. And also a couple of things that are interesting about this. Remember we talked about texture, not textures, but contrast a few minutes ago. We had the linen chairs with the glass top dining table. So that's what we have here. But also, if you look, we have glassware on the table, and the eye stopper is in a glass vase. This is really when you want to kind of mix it up. And in this case, you never want to set the table anyway because you want the realtor to have a place to write the offer. But anything that you bring in should actually maybe be in contrast to the glass. So maybe a wooden bowl or something else that would, first off, not disappear when it's on the table.
That makes sense.
All right, here we go. So textiles, you could bring in the tall centerpieces add height, but what we could do also is just bring in, how can we make this over? We could make it over with a simple placemat with texture in the middle and a low wooden bowl with a low arrangement. And oh my gosh, what do we call them? Oh, I forgot those funny little rubber green plants. What do we call those, Anne?
Are you talking about like an aloe?
Succulents. Yes,
Succulent.
aloe. Succulents. Just a nice soft bowl of succulents.
Yes.
And also, when you're putting something on a table, because the dining room table height is usually 30 inches, the height of the centerpiece should actually be no more than 10 or 12 inches. After that, it gets awkward. And as Anne called it, an eye stopper. Those are great for formal events. It's great for a reception at an event space, but they're awkward here. And for less formal spaces, tall centerpieces work where there's less traffic, maybe on a buffet. But they do become overwhelming, and we have another one here too. Oh boy, it's overwhelming. It's big, tall, awkward. The table is set, but where do you write the offer? And also, it overwhelms the room. It really takes away from the rest of the room. So something simple, low, and we don't want something oversized. All right. So again, centerpieces leave a lasting impression. We don't want it, something like this. And these are very similar to what the gal had seen with her mom. They're appropriate for a funeral or a wake, but these two spaces are not formal spaces. We want them to be relaxed and comfortable for the buyer. If the buyer walks in and feels awkward just looking at that, I can imagine my sons walking in and feeling like they're going to knock it over or something like that. So here we have it again. Back to this little neglected centerpiece. So we also don't want to underwhelm the area by neglecting it. We want the buyer to hang back, be comfortable, stick around, enjoy the space, and write an offer. How could we do that in this space? Well, with all the wood on the floor, the table, the chairs, the hardscape with the fireplace, a table runner of heavy textured fabric would work great. The bowl's the right height, but we just need to pump up the volume around it and get it up to scale. Again, balancing tables with this centerpiece. This is actually, I know that this was a house I staged. They did write the offer at the table. So when your table is about 30 inches high, you want your centerpiece, just to go over the proportions, should be about less than 12 inches. You want a vessel that will hug the table and the diners can look over the piece, and then when the buyer comes in and they're writing the offer, they're already feeling pride of ownership. Other ways here these were actually from Ballard or Pottery Barn. I'm not sure, God bless them. But here we've got trays to create unity. So we're creating a simple vignette, round trays with round tables. They're using small, medium, and high. And then rectangular tables. The good old-fashioned table runner, that creates rhythm in a room. Your eye follows that table runner right up to that buffet, that sideboard with all the candles on it and the two mirrors overhead. And it's styled, and you can still write an offer, its form and function. And on your right, this is elegant. This is actually, I think it's up in Big Sky, Montana, actually. And we have the low bowl with some fruit in it, and then the tall cocktail pitcher. Great ways to look at it. A rectangular table is just two more to get us out of here. We've got the idea. We've got height, trays, textiles, asymmetrical balance, just to bring it in. And, who wouldn't want to sit there and actually enjoy the day? There's always the exception to the rule, of course. And in this case, this is a big room with high ceilings and hardscape. The tray adds scale, there is rhythm created, because if you notice, all the chairs are different. That seems to be kind of a trend coming along. But it's also because it is such a big, tall ceiling, we can get away with having such a high, tall centerpiece. But you notice it's not tall and thin. It's really just kind of a beautiful arrangement. Here we go to scale. So if you look on your right, we have coffee tables. The first one is too big. The second one is too small. It's Goldilocks. And the third one is just right. So they really should take up 2/3 the length of the sofa. And that's actually how you should consider your buffets, and when you're putting anything over it, if you're hanging an arrangement, or if you're hanging, an arrangement of pictures or artwork or one big piece, you really want it to be just 2/3 the length of it. And oh my God, I have seen some new stuff with rugs, so I can't wait to talk about this. This is so much fun. So this is what we should not do. It's not to scale. It's too small, but let's see what we can do with this, because I've got a couple of tricks that I've seen lately, and they're really kind of fun. The first thing we all have to know is, what size do you need? So there are size charts all over the internet, but this is actually, I hand this out in my classes. This is actually one of my favorite handouts, because it really shows you how big rugs are compared to each other. And these are all over the internet, so I just suggest that you get them and just keep them in your stash. But what not to do, sometimes someone's budget is tight, so they just have a small little rug in the room, such as this. But we want it to scale, and it should fit, because it should also function properly. It's form and function. You don't want to get out of the bed in the morning and have cold toes when the carpet is down at the end of the bed. But here's an easy tip. Just put a runner on either side of the bed. This is becoming very popular. It looks great. They've got the shaggy rug on either left, or here on the beautiful room on the left, and they also have it on either side of the bed on the right. It's becoming more popular. It looks good, but here's an even better way to do a rug: asymmetry. So instead of it being, and you've got to do this in your bedroom, I'm sure, even the way it is now, it's not centered under the bed, but it's just off-centered, and these are becoming more popular. It's an option to think about, and if you have a rug that's maybe too small, try something like this. It's a great way to mix it up, and it does, it's an option. Try it. We're throwing the ideas out here. Take the ideas, use them, try them. If they work, great. If they don't, and you find another solution, let us know how you solved it. Another big thing going on now is actually layering. And when you seriously love a rug, but it doesn't quite cover the area that you need it to, it's prime for layering. Just stick a simple rug underneath in a natural material, like, sisal, and then cover the difference. We actually did something similar to this with a client last year. He had lived in the Mideast, and he had bought dozens of Persian rugs, and when we went into his home, we were doing a redesign for a library that they had added to their property. And as we're going through the house, we were shopping the house for items to use in the library, and I kept seeing these big parcels of wrapped in brown paper with rope. And I asked him, I said, what are all these magnificent packages? Because they really were fascinating. And he said, he told me he had lived in the Mideast for many years, and he had collected Persian rugs throughout his home. And I said to him, well, could we use these when we design your library? He loved the idea. And I said, I got him talking about it, and he started talking about how the rugs had been used as saddles for horses, and all used in tents, and all these, really romantic stories he was telling about how the Persians had used them. And I said, could we use layer the rugs in your room. And he thought that was even great. He said, oh, I want to help you layer them, move them around. So actually the space was about 14 by 15, and we ended up using about 20 carpets in this
Whoa.
room, all different sizes, but really magnificent. So layering is great. It extends the size of the space, of the rug, and it solves a lot of solutions. A lot of problems. Here, this is a beautiful, delightful room. Carpet's too small, so layer it on top of a sisal. Just give it a boost. That's all it needs, is just a little bit, some vitamins. Give it a sisal rug. Again, hides are becoming really popular now too. They just opened up a Holly lobby in my up in New Hampshire, and they have this magnificent pony fur rug. Of course, it's fake, but it would actually be a great, piece to use on something like this. They're thin, very thin, no tripping. They're a funky shape, so they do need something underneath to fully cover the area. And just imagine how great it would look if you had two hides together. Anne, how are we doing for time?
We are running out.
All right. Well, let me just go through. Well, do you want to end it here? Do we have any questions that we can go over?
There are a couple. I'm wondering, I'd really kind of like to get through the presentation.
All right, let's do it.
And yes.
All right, so here we go.
A couple, but.
Okay, so here we've got scale. Let's talk about scale. That's artwork. Oh, but this is what not to do. Scale is all about visual size. Think about it. A bathroom can handle large scale artwork because of all the large pieces in the bathroom. You've got the shower, you've got the tub, you've got the sinks. They can afford to handle it. That's what you want to do. Hanging artwork, if people want to email me, I will send them this recipe. It's very easy to do, and it gives you the correct eye height that you should have. Again, this is what not to do. God bless them. Scale and unity. Here, if you notice the sideboard on the right, the artwork is about 2/3 going across for the sideboard. But these three little medallions over on the left, they're just lost. So when you're hanging multiple artwork, there's also another recipe to do that. I will send that to everybody if they want to see it. But here, this is very common. People don't know how to hang artwork over a staircase. In this place situation, the artwork is the right size, it's the right scale, but it's hung over the wrong spot. It really should be hung over the landing, and it should be hung just like you would hang something on the floor. Artwork, again, in this case, we've got 4. You always want to do things in 3s. If you're going to do 4, you want to make a grid out of it. Just as they did with the grid here, or just over on the right, just make it a bigger piece. Really beautiful. Also, what's kind of sad is the lamps. Oh, these lamps are so sad. They're, you don't want to have the lamp set up so that when you're standing there, you look down, you can see the tops of the light bulbs inside the lamps. In this case, you really want to use a tall lamp so that the combined height of the lamp and the surface is 58 to 64 inches. That's what's really important. These are actually accent lamps. They shouldn't be here. Accent lamps are almost like the jewelry in a room that you can bring in later. And again, just coffee tables and scale. We talked about that. And I think how'd we do, Ian? So we talked about design mistakes and how to avoid them. Woo!
I hope you do you have your contact information somewhere there, Margaret, because you had some pretty good information about artwork that people might be interested in.
I don't have it here, but check out ADE's website. Tell them ADE's
That's a good
website.
Point. That's Margaret is an approved trainer with ADE. And I think that this is actually a great way to leave us for this evening. I think I do have one quick question, if people can hang around for actually a couple of quick questions. Um, Someone did ask about asymmetry. I'm just not sure when I'm doing it correctly. Is there any quick way to know, or can you just review how to do it?
Well, you know what? That's a great question. And actually, I have a flyer on that. So if they send me an email through ADE, I can send them the flyer that explains pretty much a recipe on how to do the asymmetry.
Oh,
Would that help?
fabulous. That I think would probably be very beneficial. Another question was about layered. Don't layered rugs look awkward sometimes?
Sometimes they do. However, if the way to keep in mind is you don't want to use the same textures. So you don't want to put a shag rug on top of a shag rug. You want to put it on top, you want to combine the weight should be different for each one. The weight should vary. And that's the key to it. That's the key. So a shag rug on top of maybe an oriental or on top of a cycle, but you wouldn't want to put a shag on top of a shag. However, you can put an oriental on top of an oriental.
So that then really the texture of the rug has something to do with it as well.
Yes.
What about the tripping hazard? Somebody just mentioned about tripping over them. You do need to be careful about that as well, correct?
Absolutely. And I don't know if anybody has solved that yet, but they sure look pretty in those pictures.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And a last question. My real estate agent won't pay me enough. What do I do?
What's the question?
My real estate agent won't pay me enough. What do I do?
Oh my God, that is so much. Well, tell them they have to take our classes here at ADE and we'll teach them how to do it.
I love it. I love it. Okay, well, we've actually gone over a little bit, Margaret. I'm sorry to keep you a little bit later, but this is such really good information. I am. Thank you. Thank you. This is great information, not just for staging, but just for design as well. Everything that you have shared with us is, I think, is important in the design world as well as, of course, in the staging world. So I cannot thank you enough for the time you spent in putting this presentation together, giving us an evening to do it for us. I'm very grateful, Margaret. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we love working with you. Thank you, Anne.
Well, thank you. And I'll say to everyone, have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Anne.